Good evening, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to the William Joyner Institute's inaugural Veterans Excellence Award Gala. My name is Tom Miller, and I just want to start off by saying, Murphy's Law is everywhere. I reached in my pocket to pull out my glasses today when I came over here, and they fell apart. So if I'm squinting or misread something, please don't hold it against me. I'll be your MC tonight, for better or worse. And by the way, do you know how many Army vets it takes to MC an event? None. They just tell the Coast Guard guy to do it. At this time, would you all please rise for the presentation of the colors and remain standing for the singing of the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance. Color Guard, present the colors. I pledge allegiance to the United States, the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Thank you to the U.S. Coast Guard Band and the Fair Winds Ensemble from the Coast Guard Academy. That was remarkable. Chokes me up every time I hear that song. And thank you to the USS Constitution Color Guard. Just awesome. Again, my name is Tom Miller. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Administration and Finance here at UMass Boston. And one of my great honors in my job is I have the opportunity to lead the William Joyner Institute for the study of war and social consequences. I'd like to welcome Provost Joe Berger, Secretary John Santiago, Steve Bone, a combat veteran representing Seth Moulton's office, and our distinguished honorees, UMass Boston leaders, family and friends, thank you for your attendance. This being our inaugural event, we truly appreciate your presence and your participation. It speaks volumes to the veterans and military-affiliated students that are in our crowd tonight. This all would not be possible without the very generous support of many of our donors that are in this room tonight. Arthur and Beverly Mabbitt, Mabbitt and Associates, Veterans Tactical Supply and Veterans Business Supply, thank you. John DeLuna and Technical Ascent, John Metcalf and the Metcalf Facilities Group, Pete Smith with Citizen Energy, who couldn't join us tonight, but we're hoping he'll be represented by Brian O'Connor, the brother of our director, in his place. But thank you for your support. As some of you may know, lastly, before I want to make sure to thank the team at the William Joyner Institute who are pictured in this slide for all their work on this over the last year. It's been a long time coming, and it's been great to work with them, along with teams from the Provost Office, Suzanne O'Neill and Dennis Lee, who are, I think, somewhere in the crowd. So thank you. As some of you may know, March 29th represents more than the date of our first Veterans Excellence Award Gala. It's also National Vietnam Veterans Day, and today is actually the 50th anniversary of the end of the war. Given the roots of the William Joyner Institute here at UMass Boston, its namesake, William G. Joyner, Jr., a Vietnam War veteran, and UMass Boston's first Director of Veteran Affairs, this date was purposeful and appropriate. Let us take a moment to recognize those Vietnam veterans we are honored to have in attendance tonight. Would you please stand? Thank you. As well as those who made the ultimate sacrifice during the war, excuse me, or those that have lost their lives since that time. Thank you, and we already gave them a round of applause, so you guys are great. Right on cue. All too often when we gather, it's to remember or memorialize the loss of one of our veterans. While we'll always pay tribute to those military members and their families impacted by their loss, tonight is intentionally different. Tonight's event was inspired by one of my longtime mentors, my father, a Korean War vet who, after serving in the Air Force, worked with the youth around Southern Oregon as a teacher, district administrator, elementary school principal, mentor and coach on the athletic field for over 30 years, developing the youth of the community. When we lost him a few years ago, at the good old age of 89, I had the honor to write and deliver his eulogy. And I was struck by the number of unsolicited emails I got from people in the community letting me know how much of an impact he had on their lives. His sense of service that started in the Air Force continued with him for the rest of his life, and he remained a pillar of his community until the day he passed. I've thought to myself over the past few years, wouldn't it have been nice to be able to recognize that somewhere other than or sometime before his eulogy? So tonight is different. Tonight's about gathering to honor the work, the post-service achievements of our nation's veterans, and their contributions in our communities around the country that work every day to strengthen the fabric of our country, that make our society, our communities a better place to be, to live, to gather, and to provide the opportunity for us all to be successful. I can think of no better way to honor William Joyner's legacy than by paying tribute to the veterans who are doing and accomplishing exactly what he set out to do here at UMass Boston as our first Director of Veteran Affairs: serve others. Tonight we are honored to have several of our monthly award recipients, 7 of 12 I think, in attendance. Would they all please stand? Shortly, you'll learn a lot more about each of these community heroes as the evening progresses. At this time, I'd like to welcome Provost Joe Berger to the podium to make a few comments. Provost Berger is a renowned and award-winning scholar whose work focuses on higher education policy, organization and leadership, and the development of higher education in various national contexts. Internationally, he's provided leadership for projects in countries such as Malawi, China, Russia, Palestine, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Dr. Berger also served as the chair of the Global Higher Education and Research Initiative for the Worldwide Universities Network. He has been honored with several national awards for his scholarship, and I would say service and leadership as well. Arriving in 2017 when he was appointed as the Dean of the College of Education and Human Development, we are now honored, I'll even say lucky, to have him as our provost. Provost.
Good evening. It's really, truly a pleasure to be here with you this evening. It's an honor. And actually, I want to start by, thanking Tom. So, Tom Miller is the epitome of what we're honoring here today, right? A leader who has, throughout his life, his service in the United States Coast Guard, but then in various other roles where he's taken what he learned through the Coast Guard and applied it in the leadership and service of others. And Tom, I also want to, thank you for sharing the story about your father, because that actually was a wonderful story that sort of brings it home to what we're all here tonight to do, right? To not just honor the incredible service that all of our veterans have provided by serving in the military, but how they've used that as a springboard to continue service, leadership, and honor for the benefit of others, individuals, communities, and our larger society. And so I really thank Tom for his leadership here, but I also know that one of the things, whether you're in the military or here at the university, that matters, and that part of leadership, we often think of it as an individual attribute, is teamwork. And that leadership, right, is a team sport. And no matter what context we find ourselves, when we have leadership responsibilities, we recognize that it's how we work with teams, that how we collectively make an impact and make a difference. And I think that Tom and his whole team, who I also thank for all of the work that went into pulling this event together this evening, is just a small example of that. And so part of the teamwork is it also takes others. I also want to thank our sponsors that Tom noted. Without your generous support, this evening would not be possible. And the fact that, we're not just investing in an event tonight, right? We are all investing in not just honoring and recognizing, but supporting, catalyzing, celebrating the type of leadership and service that so many of you are providing and that we so desperately need in these times. And in these times, having honor, dedicating yourselves to service, providing leadership for others is exactly what we all need. And there's an important intersection here between what we do here at UMass Boston, why we exist, what our values are, what is our mission and vision and purpose, and what we do with our military colleagues, with our military affiliated students, and with our veterans. We were founded as a university to provide service and access and opportunity for all, and to make sure that the work that we do here at the university is creating not just individual opportunities, but communities and a society that is different and better than it was before. So we are driven by values and ideals, democratic values and ideals, and we are very grateful for all of our veterans and our members of the military for all of the service that you have provided to make our work possible. And so we're very proud to be a university that honors and celebrates our military affiliated students and our veterans. And so I want to focus a little bit more on three words, right? Honor, service, and leadership. And we are here to honor our veterans, not just for who they are, right? It's because what you all do and what you continue to do. Service for the country. But what we're recognizing here tonight is the ways in which you continue to honor not just the military branches in which you've served, but our country. And so then, therefore, we are honored to have you here. We are honored at UMass Boston to have the Joiner Institute, to work so closely with so many organizations that support our veterans, and to be able to make a small difference in supporting our veterans. It's something that we need and will continuously improve on, and we'll do it together. But service is really important, right? And again, we're recognizing here tonight the fact that all of you here are honorees, all of our nominees, and let me tell you, I was very moved. I was really touched in reading all of the nominations and reading about our monthly award winners. The service that you provide for others, right, in a whole range of ways is truly inspiring. And so I'm grateful for that, because we are a service-oriented university. It matters, right, how we engage ourselves. And this comes to leadership then, right? There's leadership with a capital L, and we often think of leadership as people who are in particular positions. But that's only one tool for enacting leadership. Leadership is really about what we do, the choices we make, the actions we take, our ability to decisively have positive impacts on others. And when we look at all of you and what we're honoring tonight, we're honoring leadership, and that's irrespective of titles or positions. It is how you use the values, the skills, the commitments you have to benefit others. And again, I'm going to go back to where I started. In these times, we need that more than ever. So I'm humbled to be here with such an incredible group of individual and collective leaders who have done so in the military, but who have continued throughout their lives to have a remarkable impact in your communities. So thank you very much. It's right and fitting that we're here honoring you tonight. And I also recognize that there are so many others out there like you that we should be honoring for your service and for your leadership. And so for that, I thank you very deeply. UMass Boston is better off because you are part of our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. I truly appreciate your support and all that we're doing and planning to do for our veterans and military-affiliated students on campus. It's just great. I now get the distinct honor to introduce Secretary John Santiago, who was serving as Massachusetts' first ever Secretary of the Executive Office of Veteran Services. He's also a major in the U.S. Army Reserve, an emergency medicine physician at Boston Medical Center, a former volunteer in the Peace Corps, and has served as a state representative for the 9th Suffolk District since 2019. Born in Puerto Rico, he received his undergraduate degrees in biology and religious studies from the University of Texas at Austin. After college, he volunteered for the Peace Corps, where he organized sugarcane workers and communities in the Dominican Republic, and later as a Fulbright scholar in Paris. He completed his Master's of Public Health from University of Washington after returning from abroad. A graduate of Yale School of Medicine, he now works as an emergency medicine physician at Boston Medical Center, the city's safety net hospital, and actually may recognize some of the folks in attendance there, the nursing staff there, sir. He also serves as a major in the U.S. Army Reserve and has been deployed overseas twice. He's advocated to increase funding and services to address the substance abuse epidemic, affordable housing, and tackle health disparities. When COVID-19 hit, Representative Santiago doubled his hours in the emergency room and served as a member of the House of Representatives COVID-19 Working Group and Vice Chair of the COVID-19 Emergency Preparedness and Management to advise policymaking and ensure state government accountability. Another tremendous example of service. He lives in the South End with his wife, Alexandra, and son, Rafael. Secretary Santiago.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. The last time I was here was about a year ago. I actually gave the commencement address. And interestingly enough, the provost was here, and we talked about public service and how public service has taught me so much in what I do each and every day, whether it was in the Peace Corps or in the Army or as a physician and a state representative. Public service has always been my greatest teacher. So I'm honored to be here with each and every one of you. I want to thank Mr. Miller for the kind introduction here. I'm so impressed with the mission and work of UMass Boston and the Joiner Institute. I am day 29 on the job, and I'm learning a lot, but to know that we have collaborators and partners like yourself means a whole lot. I want to take a second to just recognize some important people in the room. One of us is my predecessor, Secretary Coleman Nee. He's right there. Let's give him a round of applause. And Commissioner Rob Santiago from Boston. You know, Mr. Joyner may have been the first, but this is the current commissioner from Boston, and my good friend Rob Santiago. And I don't know if Secretary Cheryl Poppy's here. I know she was an awardee, but she's my predecessor, so I just want to publicly acknowledge and thank you for your work on behalf of the veteran community. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to the people in this room. I know enough to speak quick because I'm keeping you from eating the food and getting some more drinks. So I won't take too long. In fact, I was glad I was able to make it here today. It was almost a last-minute thing we were able to arrange, but I wanted to be here to say a couple of words, but also just to thank you for your service, because public service means so much to me. But today I spent most of it across the Commonwealth. I was in South Boston with our good friend Tommy Lyons and his wife. I was in Worcester, was dashing across the state, because today, as was mentioned, it's been 50 years since the withdrawal from Vietnam. And it's amazing to hear and speaking to veterans, particularly Vietnam vets, how far we've come. Hear their stories, see what they've gone through, how far we've come as a country in providing services, where we're at today, and where we plan to be in the future. So I'm excited to lead the effort here in Massachusetts with folks like the Joiner Institute. Let me also just say I'm so honored to be here with so many like-minded folks who care so deeply and passionate about public service. You read a little bit about my bio. I'm a big believer in public service. I feel like, you know, if God gives you 80 plus years, which is the average here, the least we could do is give back. And that's why I've been so fortunate to do just that. But reading about your backgrounds and the 12 awardees, it just provides me more inspiration to do what I do. So I want to thank you for that. Because my experiences have shaped me, not just to the man, father, husband, and public servant that I've become, but hopefully into the secretary that I plan to be. As some of you may know, this is the first time the secretary serves at the cabinet level. And it's important. It's something that folks in this room have been fighting for decades, and we're finally here. And what that means is that you have direct access to the governor. A little bit less bureaucracy, although there's a lot. You know, some red tape, although there will be some. But direct access to the governor to really impact the change that you want to see across the Commonwealth. And I'm excited to lead that. And I can tell you that Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll are committed to supporting our veteran community. They have invested a significant amount of financial and human resources to supporting our veteran community. So I'm excited to lead that effort, but I can't do it alone. I need each and every one of you. Whether you work for a nonprofit, you work at a VSO, you just want to support a veteran, you are a veteran, we need your support. There's a lot of work to do, and as we start, again, I'm on day 29, my goal is to build a foundation, really, And we're doing that each and every day in the office. We're doing it externally as well, partnering with a whole host of stakeholders. And we look forward to working with you all. So please feel free to reach out, send an email. I actually read all my emails and zero them out at the end of the day. But be in touch. It's an honor to be here amongst so many public servants. Looking forward to tonight's event. And I just want to thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hope everybody enjoyed dinner. Thank you to the catering team. It was outstanding, I thought. Very well done. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite Ayla Rich up to the podium. She's going to introduce herself and talk a little bit about the William Joyner Institute work. And Ayla, come on up.
Hello. I hope you are all enjoying the evening. It is so wonderful to come together tonight and share in the celebration of veteran excellence. My name is Ayla Rich, and I'm a team member here at the William Joyner Institute, or for short, WJI, and I'm an undergraduate student at UMass Boston. I joined the WJI team in the fall of 2021 through UMass Boston's Professional Apprenticeship Career Experience, or PACE program. This is a program that places students in paid on-campus positions that align with their career prospects after graduation. From day one of working at WJI, I knew that I had arrived in the right place. Working at WJI has given me the opportunity to grow my professional and academic skills and participate in a variety of incredible research projects and organizational development. It has given me the incredible challenge of pushing myself in ways that I had never even considered or envisioned before, such as traveling with a fellow team member to present at an international military geoscience conference in Charleston, Charleston, South Carolina. And most importantly, it has given me the opportunity to be a part of something bigger than myself and join a team who are all working towards the same goal. That through our work, we are upholding and contributing to the Institute's mission of facilitating objective discourse and positive change through research, service, and celebration. In short, working here has changed my life. With that, I'm excited to briefly share some of our initiatives. While there are many details, this is just a taste of some of the amazing projects that we are involved in. Oops. There we go. To start off, we have our Honor a Veteran initiative. Each month, WJI chooses a recipient of our Veterans Excellence Award. This award is given to recognize veterans who demonstrate selfless service to the community. Monthly award recipients are celebrated at our annual Veterans Excellence Award Gala, and it is so great to see so many of you here tonight at the inaugural event. Next, we have our Veterans Service Officer Challenges and Best Practices Study. In 2021, WJI collected and analyzed data pertaining to the challenges and best practices of veteran service officers in Massachusetts. Results from the study were published and shared with the Massachusetts Department of Veteran Services. I apologize. Thank you. And we continue to work to implement recommendations to expand connectivity to veterans and their families. We look forward to the opportunity to work with the new Executive Office of Veteran Services. Next, we have our Tri-University Veteran Retention and Graduation Comparison Study. This year, WJI expanded its reach in partnership with the University of Connecticut and the University of Texas at Arlington. In the study, we will identify, compare, and contrast organizations and programming to assess the impact of veteran graduation and retention rates at each of these institutions. Next, we have our Veteran Identity and Community Project. This study will examine how post-9/11 veterans relate to their identity, including whether or not they embrace their veteran identity, and if it influences how they seek to build community, including with or without other veterans. We intend that the results of this study will aid in maximizing the reach of veteran support services to those in need. And lastly, we have the Operational Consequence Assessment Tool, or OCAT for short. In 2021, WJI collaborated with faculty and staff at UMass Boston, the United States Coast Guard, and a private sector consultant to develop the OCAT. The OCAT works to assess the social, economic, and environmental impacts of military installations on their neighboring communities. So I hope that this gave you just a taste of the variety of some of our initiatives, and if you're interested in learning more, please come and talk to us. We would love to tell you more about it. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to introduce my fellow teammate, Nicole San Juan, to come.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Nicole San Juan. I'm an Air Force veteran. I'm a former medic. I served until 2015. I'm a student here at UMass Boston, a PhD student in political sociology. I did my bachelor's degree while I was in the military. After that, I obtained a master's in international relations at Free University Berlin, where I studied issues on the former Soviet Union. After that, I was able to travel back to University of Maryland Global Campus, my former alma mater, to start teaching members of the military community at bases around Kuwait, Germany, and Europe. It was there from those students in the military community and their families that I was inspired to start a PhD and learn more about political sociology, which brought me back here to my home state, Massachusetts, last fall. I will be researching political sociology, value formation, ideologies, and worldviews, and especially those of our military and our veterans. As soon as I arrived to UMass, I heard about the William Joyner Institute by word of mouth and was connected with a number of our associates and leadership just in time to start on some of the important projects that were going on last fall. I was able to take part in that VSO study that Ayla talked about and co-present at an international inter-university seminar for the study of armed forces in Canada, where we exchanged ideas and initiatives with like-minded academics and advocates for the improvement of research on civil-military relations and veterans issues. As a VA work study student here at the Joyner, I do research on the Veteran Identity and Community Project. Please feel free to come up and talk to me about that later. We're very excited about this project. But that's enough about me. I'm here to introduce the first 4 Veterans Excellent Monthly awardees and nominees. So first, we have Miss Ellen Metcalf. She's our first nominee. Please stand, Miss Metcalf. Here's Miss Metcalf. After her time in service, Ellen worked in Massachusetts public schools and at the Coast Guard Academy and the nonprofit sector. She influenced hundreds of early leaders in Massachusetts public schools, helping students advance STEM interests and recognize the importance of leading oneself. She founded the Total Teacher Project to connect leadership development experts and to talented teachers. At the Coast Guard Academy, Ellen guided hundreds of cadets year to year. Her efforts transcended officers enlisted alike. She's now developing a K-12 curriculum for developing leaders of character across Texas. Thank you, Ms. Metcalf. Next, we have Ms. Cheryl Poppy. She wasn't unable to join us tonight. But after her time in service, Cheryl served extensive veteran community in Massachusetts in many different roles. She has a lifelong commitment to public service. She was appointed as Secretary of Veteran Services in 2020, where she directed programs, benefits, and services to over 300,000 veterans. She served as Superintendent of the Soldiers' Home in Chelsea and developed and supervised suicide prevention programs, workforce investment, and the Women's Veterans Network to address housing and homelessness. Thank you, Ms. Poppy. Next, we have Aaron Phillips. He was also unable to join us tonight, but after his time in service, Aaron served the veteran community around the nation. He was the executive director of the Warrior Connection to improve the overall well-being of veterans. Under his leadership, not one of the 1,000 and more veterans or family members that he treated has been lost to suicide. Aaron volunteers his time supporting the environment and sustainable communities, assisting veterans transitioning from military service. So thank you to Mr. Phillips. Our next nominee is Paul Atwood. He was also unable to join us tonight, but after his time in service, Paul became a professor in higher education and served students at UMass Boston. He was the co-founder and first co-director of the William Joyner Institute at UMass Boston. During this time, the Joyner Institute played an important role in normalizing relations between the U.S. and Vietnam. He spent decades working with veteran and non-veteran students and spreading his passion for educating the next generation about the consequences of war. For years, he ran the Veterans Upward Bound program for veterans at UMass Boston. So thank you to these nominees. Now I'd like to invite Nilesh Kashyap to introduce our next four nominees.
Thank you, Nicole. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all having a really lovely evening. It was great seeing you all the familiar faces, and meeting many new people today. I'm excited to introduce myself and share my story about my role at the William Joyner Institute. My name is Nilesh Kashyap, and I also go by Neil. I'm currently a second-year nursing student, and I am an international student from the state of Punjab in northern part of India. I started my journey at the Joyner Institute as a social media intern and in collaboration with PACE program. During my first semester, I would just work with social media and make some posters to post around campus to spread the word about the work we do. As the time passed by, I started taking on some more complex roles, such as maintenance of the website, updating it monthly, doing tabling events around the campus, onboarding team members, and sending out announcements to spread the work we do. Just like my friend Ayla, I got connected to William Joyner as a part of PACE program, and now I find a family on campus every time I go to the William Joyner office. I said enough about myself, and at this point, I will introduce the next four nominees. Our next nominee, Our next nominee for the Director's Excellence Award is Mr. Yoshihiro Uchida. Mr. Yoshihiro was not able to join us today, but after his time in service, Yoshihiro became a very successful businessman, judo coach, and a community developer. During World War II, while his family was sent to internment camps, Yosh was drafted into US Army as a medic. He created judo guidelines, and it became an Olympic sport. He still remains the highest ranked judoka in all of the United States. He received the Order of Sacred Treasure with Golden Rays, which is the highest honor given to a non-citizen by Japan. He was also one of the principal donors in building San Jose's Japantown neighborhood. Thank you to Mr. Ochida. Our next nominee for the Director's Excellence Award is Mr. Dan Magoon, and I would please request you to stand up. After his time in service, Dan spearheaded multiple organizations to support and honor veterans and their families. He led Massachusetts Fallen Heroes, MFH, honoring returning veterans and those who have given their lives in service since 9/11/2001. In 2016, MFH unveiled a 50-foot tribute, the first of its kind in the nation, which stands in Boston's Seaport Common. He's also the co-founder of Innovets, which is Boston's first homegrown veteran and Gold Star family-focused business accelerator. He also served in Boston Fire Department for 11 years. Thank you, Mr. Dan. Our next nominee for the Director's Excellence Award is Dr. Paul Dyson, and I would please request Dr. Dyson to stand up. After his time in service, which continues today, Paul has served hundreds of veterans and non-veteran students' educations. He devised and teaches innovative courses on veterans' experience for the Honors College. He made non-veteran faculty conscious of veterans in their classes and more aware of their value and expectations. He is a member of UMass Boston's Team Crystal Boston Marathon, inspiring others to participate. He also organized the Veterans Day reading, having veterans read creative nonfiction writing as an expressive art. Thank you, Mr. Dyson. And our next nominee for the Director's Excellence Award is Mr. Mark Silvestri. I would please request Mr. Silvestri to stand up. After his time in service, Mark devoted his career to supporting veterans and the broader community. Mark works tirelessly on behalf of veterans of Revere and their families to ensure that every person who puts on a uniform has the benefits and services that they deserve. His Veteran Service Office established more programs and opportunities for veterans than any time in Revere's history. He's also appointed as the Director of Veteran Services for the City of Revere in 2017, and Silvestri was later appointed as the key member for Revere COVID-19 Emergency Response Team. Thank you so much, Mr. Silvestri. I would now like to invite Brendan O'Connor to introduce our next four nominees. Thank you, Brendan.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. I was appointed to the co-directorship of the William Joyner Institute in August of last year. And I guess I passed my probation period because later on I was made the director. And I happened to work for Tom, who I lovingly call Tsunami Tommy, since it is, you just have to stay ahead of the wave of good effort. Thank you, Tom, for your confidence, sir. So, I'm an Army vet. I'm an Army vet. I spent 38 years in the Army, not knowing that I could retire at 20. But I kept having a good time, so why not? So, our next awardee of the monthly Veterans Excellence Award is Dr. Roger Harris. And I have got to put his face up. Let's see. Oh, there's me. Oh, you missed it. You got to see my daughter there. So, So Dr. Roger Harris, here you go. Please stand, Dr. Harris. After his time in service with the United States Marine Corps in service in Vietnam, Dr. Harris dedicated his life to education and the development of youth and community. He devoted 45 plus years of working with our nation's youth. He is the former principal of the two-time National Blue Ribbon Award-winning James P. Tamilty Middle School. He co-founded the award-winning Roxbury Preparatory Charter Public School of Boston. His honors include the United States Department of Education's National Distinguished Principal Award and the American Hero Award, the Crispus Attucks Community Service Award, and the Distinguished Vietnam Veteran Award, amongst others. Thank you, Dr. Harris. Our next nominee for the Director's Excellence Award is Lieutenant Colonel Enoch O. Woodhouse II. He was not able to join us tonight. At 103, he gets to do what he wants to do. Colonel Woodhouse was a former Tuskegee Airman who then went on to graduate from Yale and practice law for 50 years here in Boston. He has spent his life dedicated to service, promoting education, and community building for veterans and all Americans. He speaks all over the country, recounting his experience of the war and beyond to bring communities together. He was recently honorarily promoted to Brigadier General of the Massachusetts Militia. General, thank you for your service. Our next nominee for the Director's Excellence Award is Mr. Thomas J. Lyons. Mr. Lyons, there he is. Mr. Lyons, oh, hey, someone's got to keep me on track here. Okay. Mr. Lyons served the U.S. Marine Corps. He founded the South Boston Vietnam Memorial Committee and erected the first South Boston Vietnam Memorial. He serves on the Governor's Veterans Advisory Council, the Chelsea Soldiers Home Board of Trustees, and the Brighton Marine Health Center. He was recently appointed the United States Veterans Administration's Homeless Veterans Advisory Committee. Thank you for your good work, Mr. Lyons. Our final nominee for the Director's Excellence Award is Mr. Charles M. Henry, Sr. Unfortunately, he could not be here this evening. Charles served as the Director of Military Affairs, the National Veterans Advocate, and is a Service Leadership Corporation alumni. He inspires others to lead, always with service. He led and participated in humanitarian missions in Nicaragua, Honduras, Mexico, and Haiti. In 2021, he founded the House of Henry Foundation to mentor and inspire minority men, and has volunteered and served veterans for over 12 years in advocacy and legislation. At this time, so thank you, Mr. Henry. At this time, the Coast Guard Band will perform the service medley.
Acres away, my boys, acres away. Farewell to foreign shores, we sail at break of day. To our last night on shore, drink to the until we meet once more. Here's wishing you a happy voyage home. Oh, is the wild blue yonder, flying high into the sun. Down the lines to meet our thunder, as our boys give 'em the gun, give 'em the gun. Down he dives, spouting our flames from under, off with one hell of a roar. We leave the flame of dawn, with nothing to stop the U.S. Air Force. We're the mighty watchful eye, guardians beyond the blue, the invincible front line, war fighters brave and true. Boldly reaching into space, there's no limit to our sky. Standing guard both night and day, we're the Space Force from on high. From Aztec shore to Arctic sun to Europe and Far East, a flag is carried by our ships in times of war and peace. And never have we struck yet in spite of foeman's might, who cheered our crews and cheered again, for sure we come to fight. We're always ready for the call. We place our trust in thee. Through surf and storm and howling gale, high shall our purpose be. Semper Paratus is our guide, our fame, our glory too. To fight, to save, or fight and die, like the sword we are for you.
Thank you for Four Winds and the Fair Winds and the quintet. Thank you very much. So now I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker. Men and women of the armed forces, ladies and gentlemen, over the years, as our soldiers have returned from war zones, the greetings upon returning or the welcome homes have varied tremendously. In World War II, we hailed our soldiers as part of the greatest generation and welcomed them home, although many were also met with racism and segregation. As we brought home our soldiers from Vietnam and Korea, the reception was quite different. And even though they had obeyed their country's call and fought it bravely and as well as any other Americans in our history, they were not soundly and warmly welcomed. Today, the Gulf War and the GWAT eras, reception has been mixed, and yet, despite the lack of a welcome home or thank you, or the experience of racist treatment, many veterans continue their selfless commitment to service in building and strengthening their communities. A local boy, a Navy vet, whose library sits within the arc of a Ted Williams home run, once said, "A nation reveals itself not only by the men it produces, but also by the men it honors, the men it remembers." I think these veterans we are honoring tonight represent the quality of our nation. Another local boy is here tonight as our honored keynote speaker. Arthur N. Mabbitt, chairman and founder of Mabbitt Associates and Veterans Business Supply. Arthur served in the U.S. Army. He served as a major, as an environmental science officer, and was awarded the Meritorious Service Medal, the Army Commendation Medal. He has 50 years of professional experience. Mabbitt, Inc. is a nationally recognized, award-winning firm providing comprehensive environmental health and safety and architectural, engineering, consulting, and engineering services. Arthur is the founding president of the New England Environmental Business Council and is currently its longest-serving director. He is the recipient of the Chancellor's Medal for Leadership from the University of Massachusetts, Boston. He is a founding chair of the Board of Visitors, a founding chair of the Chancellor's Council, and recipient of the Distinguished Science Alumni Award, the Stephen Lewis Award for Leadership from the Environmental Business Council, and the Outstanding Eagle Scout and Silver Beaver Award from the Scouts of America. He resides in Medford, Massachusetts, and with his wife, Beverly. They have 3 grown children and 5 grandchildren. In my early conversations with Mr. Mabbitt, I noted that he served as a medical service officer in the Army. I told him I served as a medic. This commonality is what I attribute to his generosity of spirit. He has demonstrated his heart, having turned in a direction for good, compassion, and philanthropy. Importantly, we all must together turn and seek our sisters and brothers, those who, for their own reasons, for their own wounds, seen or unseen, look into the dim and see just not enough light. To them, we must extend our hand. Mr. Mabbitt, we are lucky to have you here and in our corner. Please welcome our guest speaker, Mr. Art Mabbitt.
Give me 1 second here while I remove my prior speaker's notebook. Thank you. Thank you, Brendan, for your comments, and Tom, for your assistance and my significant opportunity to speak to you all tonight. First of all, what I'd like to do, I know we thanked all of our Vietnam veterans a few minutes ago, but at this point I'd like to start by asking every veteran and everyone on active duty at the present time to please stand and let us recognize you. Please, stand. You're special, and thank you for your service. And I hope at the end of my remarks tonight, you'll be able to reflect upon my experiences here at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. Believe it or not, the school did exist in 1965. And I'm the only one tonight who can say to you that I walked in the front door on day 1, and I graduated 4 years later. It was a tremendous experience, and I'll reflect upon that a little bit. But I will say this, Joe and the other faculty members and administrative people who are here, we've come a long way, very much so. It's my distinct honor and pleasure to be with you this evening and to celebrate the exceptional contributions made by our award-winning veterans and to announce the annual Veteran of the Year Award winner. I'm a proud graduate of the charter class of 1969 of the University of Massachusetts, Boston. My wife and I have endeavored and continue to give back to the University of Massachusetts for the opportunities that it provided to not only me but my family over the years. My experiences at UMass Boston, or UMB, directly affected my life and my military career. As an undergraduate, one day in my junior year, my advisor, Dr. Herbert Lipke, and you'll see his name on campus here quite often, called me in and said, "I heard you want to be a dentist." And I said, "Yes, doctor, I've always wanted to be a dentist. My family has a medical orientation." And he looked at me and he said, "Art, you'd be a lousy dentist." Now, if you knew Dr. Lipke, he was straightforward, he didn't pull any punches, and he told the truth. And at that point, it was like cutting me off at the legs. I mean, I've always wanted to be a dentist. And I said to him, "Why?" And he said, "I'm not going to tell you now, go think about it." So I thought about it over the weekend, came back and saw him, and I said, "I can't think of any reason why I shouldn't be a dentist." Now, if there are any dentists here tonight, I apologize, and this is not meant to be a personal insult. But he then said to me, "Okay, I'll tell you why." He said, "I can't see you in an 8x8 dental operatory with your hands in someone's mouth for 6 to 8 hours a day without meaningful conversation." And then he said, "And do you know that dentists have the highest suicide rate of any profession?" And I paused for a moment and I said to him, "Well, then, okay, you've got my attention now, so what do you think I should do?" And he said, "You should go into the environmental science and engineering field." This was before EPA was established, before OSHA was established. You know, this was just after Rachel Carson published Silent Spring. And I looked at him and I said, "All right, what should I do and where should I go?" He said, "You should go to Rutgers University. It has the oldest program in the country." Well, I applied that fall to graduate school and to dental school, got accepted to a number, and ended up getting a full tuition scholarship with a stipend to Rutgers University. And I enrolled there in a doctoral program, and I was a BMOC at the time, as we used to say back then. At Rutgers, after my first year and a half, we had the draft. We had a lottery. And for any of you who don't understand what a lottery is, it's not like the mass lottery where, you win money. In this particular case, we were down at the student union having a few beers. The lottery began at 8 o'clock, and at 8:03, it was over for me. My number was number 3. It was the third number pulled. And I said, "Well, looks like I'm going to be drafted." At that point in time, I went down and I saw the dean of the graduate school the next morning, and I told him what had happened. He said, yes, he'd heard of it. And I asked him, "Please," I said, "if there's anything I can do with the education that you've provided to me over the past year and a half, I'd like to use it on behalf of the U.S. military, if that's at all possible. If it isn't, I'm not going to Canada. I'm not going to evade the draft. I'm from a family that has a long lineage of service in the U.S. military." After almost 5 months of multiple interviews and discussions with members of the U.S. Army, I was in fact commissioned, received a direct commission into the U.S. Army as an environmental science officer. That happened to be a brand new military occupational specialty. I was commissioned as a second lieutenant, went on active duty in the fall of 1970, promoted to first lieutenant, showed up at Brooke Army Medical Center in Fort Sam, Houston, completed the officer's basic course, which was a 4-month course, and then I was assigned to Pohakaloa Training Area, APO San Francisco. Now, as those of you in the military know, that APO San Francisco is where all the mail, in essence, simply goes through San Francisco to someplace in the Pacific. Well, 278 of us completed the course. 276 went to Vietnam. One fellow who spoke about 12 languages went to Washington for an intelligence job. And this guy got orders to Pohakaloa Training Area, APO San Francisco. And all of my senior officers in the course kept asking me, "Art, who do you know?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, who do you know? Are you the son of a congressman or senator or someone?" And I said, "Colonels, I have no idea what you're asking." He said, "Well, do you know where you're going?" I said, "Not right now. I know I'm going to this training area." He said, "No, you're being assigned to Hawaii." And I said, "Hawaii, really?" Well, I showed up in Hawaii on January 1st of 1970 at 6 in the morning after, quite frankly, having a little libation at Madigan Army Medical Center out in the West Coast. But I was advised upon arrival that I had to be at the Officers Club at 10 o'clock that morning to meet and greet the commanding general. That was a tradition in the Army. I walked in, my dress blue uniforms, saw General Hughes and his wife, introduced myself, and he said to me, "Lieutenant, do you know why you're here?" And I gave him a big smile and I said, "General," I said, "I've been asked that question multiple times over the past few months." He said, "Well, let me tell you this, Lieutenant, here's why you're here." He said, "We're going to be redeploying the 25th Infantry Division, 16,000 troops, 200 rotary and fixed-wing aircraft, and 50,000 dependents. And we're going to be dropping them right in the middle of Oahu, one of the main islands of Hawaii. And your job's to make sure we have no impact on the Hawaiian environment or the population here. And if you don't do a good job, you will be in Vietnam before you know it." And I saluted him with every appendage I had. And I assured him that he would receive a stellar program. My 2-year assignment became 3, and my 3-year assignment became 4. At the end of 2 years, I was back in Washington for some consultation, returned to Hawaii, and was advised to see General Hughes immediately upon arrival. And my secretary in our office, I reported at that time to a lieutenant colonel, indicated to me that the general wanted to see me. So I went up, saw General Hughes, he was still there, and he said, "Congratulations, Art, you're now the head of the service we have here at Tripler and U.S. Army Support Command Hawaii." And I said, "General, I'm only a captain." I said, "I can't be the head of the service." I said, "We have lieutenant colonels and majors in the service." He said, "I'm aware of that." He said, "But to be honest with you, I believe you're the right person for the job." And I said, "Well, how is this going to work? This is not the chain of command." He said, "That's right, it's different, it's unique. You'll report directly to me from now on." And I said, "I'll report directly to you, sir?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Not through your XO or through the chain of command?" He said, "No, you'll report directly to me." And he said, "By the way, tomorrow morning, you have to see General Gates." General Gates was a 1-star, and he was responsible for the U.S. Army Support Command Hawaii. And General Hughes was his surgeon. And I showed up and met with General Gates, and he assured me the same thing, that I was now being promoted to head of the service and that I shouldn't worry, that I had 3 stars behind me. Well, let me say it was a very unique experience. And when I left Hawaii in the fall of 1974, the command was ultimately the recipient of a U.S. Army, Department of the Army, Secretary of the Army Environmental Award. So I appreciate the opportunity. I took it, I ran with it. When I started, I had 2 people working with me, and when I left, my position was designated an 06 colonel position. I had 40 people with me, and my U.S. Army Pacific Command colonel, good friend of mine, Lee Herwig, took over my job. I was then sent to the U.S. Army Advanced Officers Course at Fort Sam again, and at that time my wife had joined me, and we had our first child in December of '74, Sandra, born in Texas. And we were then assigned, after completion of the course, to the U.S. Army Environmental Hygiene Agency at Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. At Aberdeen, I fulfilled various roles and responsibilities, but in 1976, I had to make a decision whether I made the Army a career or not. It was a tough decision, needless to say, and quite frankly, again, just like Dr. Lipke and Dr. Koplowski, who I listened to, and I'll talk about that in a minute, they recommended I get out and open up my own business. They said that, you have an opportunity, you have a knack, you will be able to succeed and come back someday and serve us. Well, I did that. I left the service in 1976, active duty, and I stayed in the reserves for another 13 years. And then finally, quite frankly, I had to get out because I couldn't take a year off from business with 3 small children under 10 years old and go to Command and General Staff College, which at that time was in residence. So what did I learn from my experiences? Well, number one, to all of you who are students here, and this is who I'm speaking to right now, listen to the advice of others and consider the implications. If it weren't for Dr. Lipke, who stood me up and at attention and told me, quite frankly, I'd be a lousy dentist, I may have become a dentist. And I may not even be here now based upon his statistics about suicide, who knows? So he knew me well. I was active on campus, I was in the student council, I was the vice president of our senior class. Listen to others. They do have something to say, and it is worth the investment and the time to take their advice and to consider all the options. Number two, when given an opportunity, even one that you didn't expect to receive, run with it and do your very best. I didn't expect to end up in the Army when I went to Rutgers. I wanted to finish with a doctorate. I never did. I got the master's, but I never finished my doctorate. So when you're given an opportunity, run with it and absolutely do your best. Overcome every challenge and persist. And why do I say persist? When I was 14 years old, my father, who was an engineer and a World War II decorated veteran in the China-Burma-India theater, said to me and gave to me a small piece of paper. And he said, Art, he said, I want you to read this piece of paper and to understand it and to practice what it says. Now, I didn't know who wrote it. It was just a small piece of paper with a typewritten message on it. So let me read it to you. Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. That was written by President Calvin Coolidge. And President Calvin Coolidge served from 1920 to 1928. He was one of America's most successful presidents. He was a Massachusetts resident. He's from Western Massachusetts. And he was self-educated as a lawyer. Number 4, take pride in your efforts and accomplish the mission. That's one thing that we know. If I have a resume that crosses my desk and we're a veteran-friendly employer, that resume gets first consideration because I know what it takes to serve in the U.S. military. And lastly, and I think you heard this to some extent from Joe tonight, ensure that an effective team is created because one does not succeed and achieve success alone. Success, as I say, is a team effort. Now, the period from 1965 to 1969 was a very tumultuous period here in the United States. The Vietnam War was raging, and our country was being torn apart. Being a veteran at UMass Boston during that period was tough. It was very tough. We had a few veterans here who had come back to war, primarily in 68 and 69. And they weren't well received, even by their fellow students. It was a terrible situation, to be quite frank. I lost members of my class here at UMass Boston and also from Medford High School, where I graduated, because of the war. Every night, the newspapers would provide banner headlines, and the news would cover the war with, quite frankly, very graphic images. And it was a conflict of the world of the Cold War. Not a war that America could ever win when our military was restrained in its day-to-day activities. And when the war was lost, our military and veterans bore the brunt of our nation's anger. The politicians ensured that the military became the scapegoat in the United States of America at that time. And shame on them. Many of our veterans were ridiculed and treated with disrespect. In 1972, here's an experience that I'll bet you know about. I returned to Boston to present my younger sister, who was 16 years old at the time, at a church cotillion convention that was being held at the Park Plaza Hotel. My father had died earlier that year, and my sister asked me to present her, and I agreed to. And I returned and attended the event at the Copley Plaza wearing my Army dress blue uniform. And at one point that evening, a gentleman, and I use that word with difficulty, approached me. And he said to me, "What kind of a monkey suit is that?" Now, I used to be 6'6", and at that point I considered my options. What should I do? Well, I guess sanity prevailed, and I said, I'm not going to let this individual, get me to a point where I do something physical. So I ignored him. There were a few other gentlemen, real gentlemen, standing around. And I informed him that it's the uniform of a U.S. Army officer, and that I wear it proudly, and I walked away. And 2 or 3 of the other people acknowledged that, and I think we put that person in his place, let's put it that way. And it wasn't until 9/11 that anyone ever really thanked not only a Vietnam veteran, but any veteran for their service. And I'm pleased to see that tradition continue. And I know I do. When I see a veteran, anyone in uniform, or anyone I know becomes a veteran, I thank them for their service. Now, today we're again faced with a myriad of social challenges. Some say these challenges are institutionalized and that America is divided and racist. I honestly don't believe that. And let me cite an example why. On September 8th, 1862, a certain young man named Alonzo from New York traveled to Connecticut to enlist in the 24th Connecticut Infantry Volunteers. He was elected by the regiment as his captain. He was from an extensive line of Quakers who were staunch abolitionists. His father, Lorenzo, is a well-documented senior member of the Underground Railroad in upstate New York. His middle name, Alonzo Lorenzo, was named after his father. Much has been written about the family and their abolitionist activities. He felt it was his duty, though, when the Civil War broke out, to serve, and he did so voluntarily. From May 22nd to July 9th of 1863, he fought in the siege of Port Hudson, one of the bloodiest battles in the Civil War. This was on the Mississippi River in order to break the blockade and give the Union access to the Mississippi. It was during that battle that he was hit by a cannonball and lost his right arm. There's a picture of Alonzo in 1864. He received 2 amputations and was sent to a field hospital in New Orleans, likely to die. However, at the hospital he was befriended by a former slave, now a free man, named Lafayette Hogue. Mr. Hogue cared for and assisted the severely wounded Alonzo in the difficult and arduous journey from New Orleans back to Rochester, New York. It's tough enough to get from New Orleans to Rochester today, never mind in 1862 and 63. Mr. Hogue, Lafayette, and Alonzo became very good friends. Alonzo actually introduced Mr. Hogue's future wife to Lafayette. They married. Alonzo remained in Rochester, and Mr. Hogue and his wife left Rochester and ultimately settled in Rutherford, New Jersey. They were the first freed slaves to ever settle in Rutherford, New Jersey. They built a beautiful home in the area, a very Italianate home in 1872. And he became a distinguished businessman in the New Jersey community. Alonzo was further honored later in life with a brevet promotion to colonel and ultimately became the superintendent of public schools in Rochester, New York. Excuse me. He was a well-respected member of his community, and he was recognized and has been as a hero of the Civil War in multiple volumes, including the Union Army, and was recently featured in a book, this book which was published last year by Professor Johnson of San Jose State University. There was an actual contest conducted at the end of the Civil War on a national basis, recognizing Union veterans who would have to submit a manuscript and write with their opposite hand. And Alonzo won an award. And his writing, his treatise, was on the Battle of Port Hudson and what actually took place. Now, a few years ago, my wife and I were invited to attend a special dedication ceremony at the former Hogue home. As I said, the house was being nominated for the Register of Historic Places. The Hogue family relatives, my wife and I, were presented with the keys to the city and proclamations declaring a special day. Why were we invited and afforded such a courtesy and recognition? Well, the full name of this Union colonel was Alonzo Lorenzo Mabott. So don't let anyone tell you that this country has problems. Yes, we have challenges, and they can be met. But if we all work together, which is the foundation and basis of this great country, we can achieve anything. Why is everyone wanting to come across the border right now from over 100 nations around the world? So just reflect upon that, and I think we can understand it. Now, it does take some effort, and it does take some commitment, and it absolutely takes persistence. But it weren't for Mr. Hogue, Lafayette, and his kindness, his caring, his generosity, and his love for my great-grandfather, I wouldn't be standing here with you today. And that's a fact. So this isn't a made-up story. This is a real story. And I'm very pleased to share this with all of you tonight. This is honestly, I've spoken on numerous occasions, but I felt this would be appropriate to provide some perspective. So don't let anyone convince you that we're a flawed society. Yes, we have difficulties. Yes, we have challenges that we must address. But Americans are caring, loving, and respectful of other people. The story of Alonzo and Lafayette is a real-life example of what makes America great and what we can achieve together, regardless of race or national origin. America is the greatest heterogeneous nation on earth. I've worked overseas for the past 30 years. No other country in the world has a Bill of Rights, and where our citizens have opportunities for personal advancement found, again, nowhere else in the world. So I thank you for your attention over the past few minutes as I reflected on my life of my great-grandfather, his friend Lafayette Hogue, my experience as a graduate of this great institution, the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and as former Chancellor Keith Motley would say, a great public research university with a teaching soul, as well as my military service. I want to thank all of our veterans present this evening, and some of you who are in ROTC and planning to become active duty members of the U.S. military. Thank you all for your service. You are special. Go forth. Make us all proud. Give back to others as you achieve success. That's a requirement of wearing the uniform, quite frankly. Veterans set the example because, remember, the U.S. military is the most diverse organization in the United States. You are less than 1%, exactly 0.727%, who volunteered to give up their life for the defense of our nation and your fellow citizens. God bless our veterans, God bless all of you, and the United States of America, the land of the free because of the brave. Thank you all very much.
Mr. Mabott, what a art.
Thank you.
What a beautiful story. Thank you so very much. We are honored by your presence, and as a small token, a heavy token, we present this in gratitude for your philanthropy to the community and to the nation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Wow, and I got to follow that act. So, so here we are. I am now here to introduce the Director's Award winner. I must say that the honorees of the monthly Veterans Excellence Award are a robust dozen. We have 1 from the Coast Guard, 3 from the Marine Corps, 9 from the Army. World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the First Gulf War, the Global War on Terror, and lesser talked of conflicts are in their various resumes of uniformed service. We have firefighters, lawyers, public administrators, public servants, doctors, educators, engineers, coaches, and entrepreneurs. Among the races and creeds herein, we have a Japanese American unjustly incarcerated by the unfounded fears of his American neighbors. We have Americans of African descent ascending despite racism and segregation. We have representations of all the world's huddled masses yearning to breathe free. In this squad, we have lower enlisted, middle and upper non-commissioned officers, and commissioned officers. Owing to so much excellence, really an embarrassment of riches, our selection had a very difficult task. So, without further ado, let's honor, celebrate, and serve our community of veterans here tonight, the veterans in our communities, the veterans in our hearts. I want you to please welcome a Marine, an educator, and an inspiration to all. The William Joyner Institute for the Study of War and Social Consequences 2023 Excellence Awardee is Dr. Roger Harris. You're quite welcome. Dr. Harris, on behalf of the William Joyner Institute, we have this to present to you. This is a bust of William Joyner, and the artist is here in the audience today. Thank you so very much for all that you've done.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. It's your microphone. You better say something.
You know, I was, thank you, I'm humbled by this. You know, I was looking at the back of the program, and it says, a hero is someone who has given his or her life to something bigger than oneself. And it made me think about who the real heroes are in life. And, you know, I learned as a 20-year-old Marine in Vietnam to never take things for granted. You know, you could be here today and gone today. And so I first would like just to take a moment to thank the Creator for allowing us to gather together like we are today, to celebrate, you know, those who have put the uniform on, those who served their country, and then continued to serve after their service to the military. I also want to thank the William Joyner Center, Mr. Miller, and the entire administrative team. I was sitting there watching the band and the chorus. And I used to be a principal in Boston, and we had an amazing chorus, but they didn't sound as good as you all. And so I just want to give you guys a big round of applause because, and I thought that every recipient was going to have to come up and say something, right? So I was sitting there, jotting down some things that I might say, and I was waiting and listening to other people so I wouldn't say the same thing. So I did jot down a few things, and my wife was laughing at me because it looks like chicken scratch, right? And then she said, you did all that for nothing because they're not even calling you all up, But I do want to thank Thomas Miller and Brendan O'Connor and his team, for not just honoring me because, I accept this on behalf of, wherever it is, I accept it on behalf of, all the recipients because, everybody on those panels are just incredible people. I'm just honored to be among that group. But I do want to say a little bit about my experience in Vietnam because I was with 2nd Battalion 9th Marines. I was in Vietnam from January 1967 to February 68. And 2nd Battalion 9th Marines were in I Corps, which was right at the border, the DMZ. And so we were at all the hot spots. We were at GLN, Con Tien, Camp Carroll, Rock Pile. We were so close to North Vietnam, they could bombard us with rockets and artillery, and they did it on a regular basis. I'm one of the Marines that are featured in the Ken Burns documentary, The Vietnam War, and in episode 5, it's entitled, This is War, This is What We Do. And it's, I don't know how Ken got the footage, but he has footage of us at Con Tien and how bad it was. And when I was there, there's really nothing that you can do. Like when all the Marines know when you go through Paris Island, from the day you step on to the day you step off, you're just working out. You're constantly honing your body, you're exercising, you're running, you're learning Marine Corps history, you're learning to fight, you're learning to kill. And they tell you in hand-to-hand combat classes that hand-to-hand combat will last maybe 5 or 6 seconds before someone makes a mistake and dies. And initially when I first heard that, I was like, whoa. And that was always in the back of my mind. It's like, I wonder, how I'm going to fare. And to be honest, when I joined the Marine Corps, I wasn't and volunteered to go to Vietnam. I didn't care if I died, because I grew up in a house with my mother and my grandmother. And my grandmother, I was telling the young lady at my table, she's from Wilmington, North Carolina. My grandmother's from Wilmington, North Carolina. And my grandmother only went to the 3rd grade, and my mother only went to the 10th grade. And they never talked to me about college. So when I got out of high school, I barely got out of high school, I joined the Marine Corps and I volunteered to go to Vietnam. And I felt that 2 things could happen. If I died in Vietnam, my mother would get rich. She'd get $10,000. I thought that was a lot of money. I said, my mother will be able to buy a house if I die in Vietnam. And if I live, I'll be able to get a good job when I get out. And, I drank the Kool-Aid. And, the Marine Corps teaches you to be a killing machine. And I'm going to say some things I probably shouldn't say. But, I remember my sergeant telling us, you do not have permission to die until you kill 3 Vietnamese. You do not have permission to die until you kill 3 Vietnamese. And I remember thinking, I'm from Roxbury. 3 is the standard, I'll kill 10 a day. Crazy, right? And we went up north. We were at the DMZ and we were bombarded daily. And we were surrounded, we were on this hill and we were surrounded, and they shot artillery on us every hour, and guys were getting blown to bits. And I remember praying, please let them come so we could fight hand to hand, because there's nothing you can do when the artillery is coming in. It's just hope that it doesn't land on you. And when I was at Con Tien, I had the opportunity, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my mother because she just passed away a couple of months ago. But when I was in Vietnam, I had the opportunity to call home. And I said, Ma, I just want to apologize to you for all the problems I caused when I was in high school. And she said, why are you talking to me like this? I said, because you're probably never going to see me again. I said, everybody in my unit is dying. I said, we're being sacrificed. We're like pawns in a chess game. And I tried to tell her what was happening, what we were experiencing, and she cut me off, and she said, I talk to God every day, and you're special. You're not going to die in Vietnam. And I said, hey, Ma, everybody's mother thinks they're special. You know, I'm putting pieces of special people in bags every day, right? And she kept saying, no, you're special. You're special. And I said, Ma, you know, it's really bad. We have to drink mud sometimes. We can't get water. You know, I wanted some sympathy, and she wasn't giving me any. She had more faith than I did. And the last thing she said to me before I hung up, she said, God has a plan for you. And I said, right, and I hung up. And the artillery would come in, and I started praying. And I had 3 prayers, and I made a promise. And the first prayer was, God, please, if I get hit, let me die. Because guys are getting their arms blown off and legs blown off, and I didn't want to come home like that. My second prayer was, before I left to go to Vietnam, my high school sweetheart, she was now a freshman at Northeastern University, then a freshman at Northeastern University. She had a baby girl. I got a letter in Vietnam, we had a girl, and I said, God, I just want to lay on my back and hold my daughter up and kiss her. That was my second prayer. My third prayer was, I want to play college football. And then I made a promise. I made a promise to myself, and I made a promise to God that if I make it out of here, I'll spend my life working with kids so that they won't have to go through what I went through. I made that promise. And I'm not going to go into all the gory details, but it was some miraculous things happened. I mean, guys that were with me, as close to the people that were sitting with me and I got to acknowledge my wife, Cheryl, because she's the first one that let me know that I had PTSD. Cheryl, you stand. I want to thank you for your patience. You know? For a long time, I didn't think I had PTSD, you know, but I do. But anyway, that's another story. That's another story. I love you. I love you very much. So I go through some crazy experiences, and I'm able to get out of Vietnam. And I was listening to a gentleman talk about, you know, how Vietnam veterans weren't welcomed at home, and it made it. I wasn't going to say this, but I need to. Because I landed at Logan Airport, and I had my uniform on and my medals and ribbons all on my chest, and I was so proud. I had fought 13 months for my country, and many of my friends, you know, had died. And Tommy, you probably read the story about me and Jack Joyce. I'm from Roxbury. Jack Joyce is from South Boston. You know, we met in Vietnam, and we became best friends. 45 years later, we're still best friends. The Globe and the Herald has done stories about how Vietnam brought black and white Boston together. But I landed at Logan Airport, and I had my uniform on with all my medals and ribbons on my chest, and I was so proud to be home. And I walked out to this curb, and 6 taxi cabs just went right by me. And I thought, I must be in the wrong spot. And then the state trooper that was there stepped in the street, and he stopped the 7 taxi, and he said, you've got to take that soldier. And the cab driver looked up at both of us, and he said, but I don't want to go to Roxbury. And I remember thinking, how does he know I live in Roxbury? And then it hit me. He didn't see a Marine who had fought for 13 months in his country. He saw a nigger, and niggers live in Roxbury, and I'm not going. Now, young people, you need to understand that this was in 1968. This was the height of the civil rights movement. There was a lot of craziness in the United States. But that was my welcome home. That was my welcome home. I got stationed at Quantico. 3 months later, Martin Luther King was killed. And my unit got called to go quell the riots in D.C. And I thought they were going to give us billy clubs and have us stand in front of the stores. And they mustered us up and started passing out helmets and flak jackets. And then they gave us M16s with live ammunition. And I asked the executive officer, I said, sir, where are we going? we're going back to Vietnam. And he said, no, we're going to D.C. I said, D.C.? With M16s and live ammunition? He said, yes, you have a problem with that? I said, well, black people are upset because Martin Luther King was killed. And they're not killing people, they're burning buildings down. If you send us up there, people are going to die. We're killers. That's what we do. We kill people. And he said, yeah, you have a problem with that? I said, I do. I said, I got family and friends in Washington, D.C. He said, and? And I said, I'm not going. And he said, are you telling me you're not going? Or are you asking me not to send you? I said, you can take it any way you want, but I'm not going. So they gave me Article 15. And I got out. What they did is they gave me Article 15 and transferred me out to the woods where I did ambushes and assaults, things that guys do that haven't been in Vietnam. And that's how I spent my last 6-8 months. And I came out of the Marine Corps. I was very bitter. But I had an opportunity. A friend of mine who was playing college football, who I'd read about when I was in Vietnam, had signed a contract with the Cleveland Browns. And he came by my mother's apartment, and he asked me what I was going to do, and I said, I want to go. Long story short, he made a call to a coach in Nebraska, ended up getting a tryout, and made the team, got a scholarship, transferred to Boston University, ended up being most valuable player at Boston University, and went to work in the Boston Public Schools in 1974, which was the first year of desegregation. And I got sent to Hyde Park High School, and you know, most of you from Boston, you know how it was in 1974. And up until then, I didn't know why I had lived. I had thought that God had made a mistake by letting me live because I was with good Marines that were good Christians, and they died, and I didn't. And I thought God made a mistake because everywhere I went, Contien, GLN, Camp Carroll, I got out of Camp Carroll on a helicopter with dead bodies, got to Dong Ha, which was division headquarters, turned in my rifle to catch a plane to Da Nang. Dong Ha starts getting hit. Jump on a plane with the artillery coming in. We land in Da Nang. I got one night left in country, and Da Nang gets hit by zappers, you know, suicide soldiers. And I'm thinking death is following me. And then I get out that next morning, and I, you know, land in the Philippines and then L.A. and then Logan. But in my mind, I'm thinking I cheated death because I didn't understand why I lived and so many other guys had died. And it wasn't until 1974 when I started teaching in the Boston Public Schools. And I saw the reception. It's like I had a magical gift with kids, black kids, white kids, Asian kids, it didn't matter, Spanish kids. They all flocked to me. And that's when my mother's words came back, that God has a plan for you. And from that time to this, I've been on a mission. I believe that my life was spared in Vietnam to do the work that I've done. And I've been blessed. I've been truly blessed. All my dreams have come true. All the dreams that I had in Vietnam came true. And what I'm trying to do, what I've been trying to do for the last 47 years is keep my promise. I've won, I think in 13 years, 11 city championships. I won 2 state championships. Then I became a principal. I was Massachusetts Principal of the Year. I was National Distinguished Principal. I've won so many awards, you know. I used to give them to my mother. And now my wife and I have boxes of awards, you know. And then I got recruited. I started getting invited to Sweden, and then I got recruited to take on the largest charter school network in Massachusetts. And I created a mandatory Mandarin program for kindergartners, and that expanded. I ended up getting a $1.6 million grant from the government. And after 5 years, I had 865 kids, black and brown, poor kids, who they said wouldn't be interested in Mandarin, it would be too hard for them to learn. They could understand Mandarin, speak Mandarin, and learn to write Mandarin. I've been to China now 17 times. I've taken kids, their parents, teachers, board members. My life has truly been blessed. And what does my heart good is that my mother, and then I got chosen by Ken Burns to be in that documentary, and then my whole life changed. I started traveling with him and doing things. But my oldest daughter, she says, Daddy, why are you still working? You know, she said, why are you still working? She said, you've done all there is to do. with kids in schools. You know, I've mentored so many kids. One of my former students is here with me now, Marty Summers. I coached him, and he was one of my kids at West Roxbury High School. Now he's a superstar math teacher in the Boston Public Schools. And my daughter says, "Why are you still working? You should retire and play golf and go fishing." And I would lose my mind, you know, because what I do is I think about all the guys that didn't come back from Vietnam. I think about the guys who came back and who are messed up. I think about the guys who have no arms and no legs. I think about the guys who are under bridges. I think about the guys who are at the lights, you know, with cups asking for change. And I told my daughter, as long as I can breathe, as long as I can get up in the morning, I'm going to do as much as I can, for as many as I can, for as long as I can. I had the opportunity to go to Boston College for a doctoral program, and I was in a cohort, and there was a gentleman in the cohort with me, an older guy. He was an indigenous tribal elder from a reservation in Maine, and I thought the curriculum was boring, and I used to go to him during the breaks, and I'd say, what is the purpose of life, man? I said, we have to study these boring classes, pay all this money to get a degree to qualify us to work for somebody else. I mean, is this what life is about? He put his arm around me and he said, my tribe believes that I said, what is the purpose of life? He said, my tribe believes that the purpose of life is to make the path wider for those coming behind you. The purpose of life is to make the path wider for those coming behind you. Now, I've always heard parents, you know, that want a better life for their kids, but I never heard it articulated like that, a whole group of people. My tribe believes that the purpose of life is to make the path wider for those coming behind you. And I use that when I train teachers, because I retired as a superintendent and went to work at Boston University as a professor and then faculty director. So I train teachers and principals, and I let them know that. And I tell them my story. I said, but everybody doesn't go through a Vietnam, but everybody has their own Vietnam. And if you're living today, if you can get up in the morning, if you can breathe, if you can think, you've been blessed. I said, I've been blessed. Anybody who's alive has been blessed. The question for all of us is, what are you going to do with your blessing? What are you going to do with your blessing? And we have to realize what our blessing is. And so everybody that's on these panels over here, you know, they've committed themselves beyond the military. The military is one thing. You know, folks have told me, oh, you need to write a book. I want to read about the Vietnam thing. And I said, Vietnam was 13 months in my life. I want my legacy to be what I did after Vietnam, not what I did in the military. You know, and that's why I appreciate, you know, the William Joyner Institute, because you're not honoring warriors. Because if you think about it, the William Joyner Institute for the Study of War and Consequences. What are the consequences of war? Soldiers don't benefit. Nobody wins or loses. You know, nobody wins, really. Everybody loses. Everybody loses in war. I mean, that's real. You know, you come home damaged, you know. Your government may win, but the soldiers, their families. And when I read this back page, it made me think about, you know, all the Gold Star families, you know. And so, and I'm not supposed to say this, but I'm going to say this. You know, we walk around with these little cell phones in our hands, right? These cell phones are computers that are more powerful than the computers in the Pentagon when I was in Vietnam. You know, and technology is changing like this. It's rapidly changing. You know, I can call friends in China right now, and in 20 seconds I'm talking to friends in China. When will we evolve like technology? When will we get to a point where we can stop sending our sons and daughters to fight and die and kill? You know, when can we teach our kids not our kids, because our kids are the soldiers. When can our society or the societies of the world get to a place where we're at a level where we don't have to fight to resolve problems? And that's my wish. That's it. So right now, I'm in Atlanta. I live in Atlanta, and I'm trying to start another charter school. I'm trying to start a world peace school. I want to bring kids together from all over the world to have them get to know each other, and they teach them leadership skills. So as they evolve in their countries, they'll be less likely to go to war because they'll be friends. And so in my own head, that's my way of making the path wider for those coming behind me. And so to all the members of the Joiner Center, the Joiner Institute, I thank you for this beautiful bust. And I need to acknowledge the guy who made it, because I was sitting at the table and the sculptor, can you come up, please? So what the point I wanted to make was the Joiner Center is, I feel, spiritually connected to them because they honor veterans who are working in the community, who are continuing service. And that's what my life has been about. So thank you all very much. And I want to accept that on behalf of my mother and all the mothers of veterans who worry about their kids who are going off in the service of our country. Thank you so much.
Wow. Make the path wider. I love it. I love it. What a great concept. Thank you, Dr. Harris. Thank you for all that you've done and all that you continue to do. We're honored by your presence and proud that we were able to appropriately recognize your achievements and continued work. Wow, So, we're getting towards the end. So what's next? A good friend of mine once said, at all events, what makes them really great is to have a what's next. And we have that tonight. And we're excited to announce a new partnership between the William Joiner Institute and a group called XR Terra, where we're going to work to create a student group here at UMass Boston, initially with veteran students, to explore the metaverse, virtual, augmented, and mixed reality, as a way to connect with our younger generation students, as a way to build a workforce pipeline to a burgeoning industry. And so tonight, we have XR Terra with us. I hope some of you are able to take advantage of the demonstration. But we have Hakan Satriglu from XR Terra, who's going to give us a little bit of a run-through of what we can expect with this program before we close things out. So Hakan, please join us.
Thank you, Tom. First off, it's amazing and it's a great honor to be in front of you. Thank you for your service, past service, present service, continued service. I'm an immigrant. I came to this country 33 years ago. As Mr. Mabbitt said, that it's, I cannot think of a better country where entrepreneurial spirit is so amazing that you can basically do anything, and I do agree with you that persistent is pretty much the only thing that goes. I'm going to take a few minutes. I know that I'm the last speaker here before we break for more coffee, tea, and drinks, and before you can all go home. As Tom mentioned, what's coming, many of you have, or most of you have, a cell phone now. I can bet that it's either an iPhone or a Google Android phone of sorts, and those devices are only 15 years old. In 15 years from today, I'm sure there's going to be an event like this, some in physical form and some in the metaverse. We're all going to have some sort of a smart glasses, and that's what's coming. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been in the education space last 24 years now. And Dr. Harris, as you mentioned, the tech medium that's going to change everything, it's about to happen. To get the kids to connect with one another as if they are in the same room, and if, taking someone to a war zone or in really struggling environments is really upon us. And we're gonna call this metaverse, but the term we're gonna start using, you're gonna start hearing is about a lot is gonna be XR, and it's a extended realities or X of realities. You're gonna hear augmented reality, you're gonna have mixed reality, and you're gonna have virtual realities. And my team is set up there. Hopefully after this very brief conversation here, come meet me, come meet the team. As Tom mentioned, this is going to affect everybody in this room, whether we are connecting with one another in a virtual or augmented environment, whether we're trying to learn new skills, but all your career pathways, especially for our students, it's gonna require the skills that is gonna be required. Here are some articles from the last 2-3 years. Tim Cook, Apple CEO, said it's going to pretty much, overtake our lives. You see the military's $22 billion Microsoft deal. It had some budget cuts, so that number may be a little bit lower now, but it's still going. Facebook changed their name to Meta after Metaverse. Has nothing to do with Facebook, but it's a term that's been used in a book about 20 years ago. Accenture, it's a very big consultancy firm. Some of you may be working there, some of you may end up going. They just bought 60,000 headsets. So anybody who starts working there will be getting these headsets in order to be training, in order to just communicate with one another. Bank of America, similarly. We have a quote from Bill Gates. A lot of the meetings are gonna move into the metaverse environment. Companies like Unity and, all right. Never a good night without any technical. Many of you probably openly or secretly played Fortnite or continue playing. Tonight you may continue playing some of that. Fortnite is written by a company called Epic, and they just announced a new environment. So education, like we're in a great institution at UMass Boston, and thank you, Joe and Tom and Brendan for inviting me again, but entire higher education as well as K-12 education is going to change over the next decade. You have elements from Walmart. This is a 2-year, almost 3-year-old report. It was putting the global impact at $1.5 trillion, and they just announced a new report to all the companies saying like you're going to have skills you never needed before. And then Citibank report came out, and that $2-3 billion all of a sudden became $13 trillion impact globally. So it's big. It's the next generation of internet. It's coming. I just wanted to come here to hopefully, some of you may have experienced or heard about this before, but this is coming. Come meet me, come see me, meet the team. But this is going to pretty much over the next decade change everything we do. So from that perspective, thank you once again for having me here. And the best conversation is going to be that once we get to meet each other, and this is going to impact especially our students' career pathways in a big way. So thanks for having me, and enjoy the night.
Hakan, thank you very much. We're really very excited about this program. So all the veteran students in the room, spread the word. This is coming, and we're looking for students to participate in this program. And what better way to broaden the pathway than through in real life and in virtual reality, right? Awesome. Again, just as a reminder, before we all disperse, we want to make sure to get a picture of all our monthly awardees. So please, after the event closes, if you join us up here around the posters, we'll do that. All right. Tonight was different. Tonight felt good. We heard a lot of tremendous stories, tremendous experiences, tremendous contributions from our veteran community to the communities across America, again, building the fabric of our country. We hope that we'll be able to do this again next year, and we'll look forward to that opportunity. As we close out tonight, we'd like to have you remain seated and enjoy a rendition of God Bless America by the Fair Winds Choir.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Thank you to the Fair Winds Choir. That was beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our event. We do have the room for a bit longer. I hope that you'll continue to network a little bit and take advantage of the coffee and tea, and looks like the bar still has a few options there. But also, please take advantage of the XR Terra demo over there if you'd like to do that. And again, thank you for everyone for attending, all of our veterans and active duty that are here in the room. Thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're going to do in the future, and we'll see you again next year.